David, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
I started reading the roadmap, and thank God you agreed to come on, because that book's too thick for me. But I want to come back to some interesting parts within that book.
Sure.
Very, very, very thought-provoking.
That's one of my smaller ones.
Yeah, that's too thick for me. But before we get into that, a few questions, because I haven't really seen your stuff since back in the Terry Wogan days.
Right.
So just a few questions to see where you're still at. Do you still think some of the world leaders are shape-shifting aliens, the royals and politicians, and if so, anyone in particular?
Well, what I'm saying is that the perception that the conspiracy to enslave humanity is only on the political, financial level, and that's where most people see it, is way out from the truth. What I'm saying is, if you keep expanding the conspiracy outwards, you're eventually going to another dimension of reality. And that dimension has, understandably, I guess, entities in it that look anything but human. And that's where it's really coming from. And so in my journey, if you like, since the top of my head blew off in 1990, when I was, presenting for the BBC, or just finished presenting for the BBC, it's been a sequence that's basically gone deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. Because I've always worked on the premise that whatever I know, there's always more to know. In the early 1990s, it was all about the fact that there is a network of secret societies, fiercely compartmentalized, so most people within the network don't know the real big picture. But the inner circle is actually running it. And this network, this global network of secret societies, has an interlocking leadership. And it's that which works through politics, all frickin' sides of it, left, right, and center, that works through the corporations, that works through the Silicon Valley corporations, that not only works through things like the World Health Organization, but through the Rockefellers in 1948 created it, that created the United Nations, the World Bank, all these global institutions, which now increasingly dictate global events, that were behind the creation of the European Union, which, for what reason? If there's a few of you and you want to control the many, you have to centralize decision-making. The more diversity and points of decision-making there are, the less any central cabal can dictate events. So you want to centralize decision-making. So, for instance, the European Union, you've got the so-called political parliament of the European Union in Strasbourg. You're having a laugh, are you? It's Brussels and the bureaucrats that are deciding everything. So it's a big centralized institution, which means from those few at the center, you can dictate events throughout the entirety of Europe. So you've got this network of secret societies. And then, as I was researching this in the early 1990s, I started to realize that a lot of these inner circle initiates of this, and some of them rich and famous, were involved in satanic human sacrifice ritual. I found that they were involved in pedophilia. And the more that I've understood this network, the more you realize that Satanism and pedophilia are actually one of the great foundations of this network and how it works, not least how they keep people in line. What was Epstein doing except creating a situation where people could be blackmailed, people of influence, political influence, royal influence, to do what they were told?
Was he a shape-shifting lizard, Epstein?
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because one of the women who was a girl when she was in the Epstein circle, a lady called Juliette Bryant, She tells the story of how she was in South Africa. She was a would-be model, and she was invited to a meeting with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton, and she said, I gave Epstein kind of credibility that he could do what he was telling me because Bill Clinton was sitting next to him. And when you do the research, because you try to check everything, Epstein and Clinton were in South Africa at that time, right? So then she gets into the Epstein circle, and she goes to the island. And she said that on one occasion she looked at Epstein and he transformed into something else. She said it was not like directly reptilian. She described it as a reptilian dragon alien type of thing, which kind of shocked her. And she said, well, at that time, I knew nothing about any of this. And then later, her mother started doing research into what I was saying, and it kind of fitted. I do research over such a vast spectrum of subjects that appear on the surface to have no connection. But unless you do them, you can't understand the true nature of the here and now everyday events. So we're sitting here now, for instance, because one of the great areas that I've researched and go into in the roadmap is the nature of reality itself. Without understanding the nature of reality and how it's nothing like we experience it, you can't understand daily events. Because this, the inner circle of this cult, there's basically two worlds, right? There's the world of the cult, and what that's doing is passing over through the generations, the inner circle, not Bill and Joe down the lodge, highly advanced knowledge of where humanity is being taken to greater and greater dystopia, but also the nature of reality. Now, that has to be kept from the people, the population, the target population. So what you do, and if you do the research, you'll find this is the case. That cult inner circle and people like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and such like, they have created and control the sources of information that the population get. So if you look in America, the education system, programming system in America was instigated by J.D. Rockefeller, the Rockefeller family. And so on one side, you've got the cult passing over this advanced knowledge to its inner core through the generations, isolating it from the population, and then controlling what the population see. So people say, "Oh well, look at the global media. It's owned by so few people." Yeah, them. They own it. And why is the media telling you the same as the education system does? You look at Silicon Valley. Now, of course, the internet is this massive source from which people get their sense of reality. They get their perceptions from. We form our perceptions from information. Control information, you control the perceptions. This is what censorship's all about. So you look at Peter Thiel of Palantir, this CIA seed-funded organization that is massively involved in the surveillance through the intelligence agencies, the military, NHS in Britain, etc. You look at Elon Musk, of all the companies that he runs, including X. You look at David Sachs, who's been appointed to be the AI crypto czar of Donald Trump. And you look at your Zuckerbergs, and you look at your Jeff Bezos, and they also are expressions of this cult. And servants of this cult. You know, if you can see them in the public arena, they're gophers. The real power is behind the scenes. So all these sources of information that the population is getting are coming from these cult sources and these cult gophers. So you have two worlds, and they are divided by one word: knowledge. You keep the advanced knowledge within your inner circle of the cult, and you give the population basically a load of old crap. And so you keep from them as best you can, and it's very effective, the nature of reality itself. So if I said to most people, when you look through your eyes, can you see everything in the space you're looking at? They'd say, oh, of course I can, mate. Of course I can. Bloody obvious. See everything. No, you can't. Staggeringly, and I've said many times, this should be taught to every child at the earliest time that they can grasp it. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our experienced reality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in all its forms. Visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, everything we're looking at now is within that band of frequency, is a smear of the 0.005%. So if you take that, humans are basically blind. But because it seems that we're seeing everything in the space that we're looking at, then people don't realize that they are. So things that they understand, because they understand the nature of reality, because it's passed on, most people don't understand and thus dismiss by reflex action. I'll give you an example. You know when people say, honestly, mate, I saw this UFO, it came out of nowhere and then disappeared into nowhere. Or people say, there was this entity and it just came out of nowhere at the end of the bed, and then disappeared. But it hasn't appeared from nowhere and it hasn't disappeared. What this phenomena has done is entered visible light, which is the only band that we can see, and to the observer, it's appeared out of nowhere. And when it leaves, it appears to disappear into nowhere. All it's done is change its frequency to enter visible light and then gone back to where it came from. And so we're sitting here now, and the entirety of infinite reality exists in the space that we're sitting in. But we are only able, like the radio and television stations and the analog system, we're only able to see one channel. All the other channels, I mean, what happens? You've got a radio station, you've got a radio. So you tune it to radio station A. Okay, I can hear it. Okay, so now move it to radio station B. Oh, I can hear another station now. Yeah. And the station you've just gone from, station A, has not ceased to exist. It's still broadcasting. It's that you're not tuned to it anymore. And these, I call them biological computers, lock us in to a certain band of frequency. And that's why we can only see a limit, a tiny limit of what there is to see. And so when you talk about
aliens,
yeah, and non-human entities, understandably, from that perspective, people say, well, why can't we see them then? Well, my answer to that is you can hardly see anything, mate.
Have you ever seen an alien? And what am I to look out for if I'm to spot one?
Well, first of all, they operate in this other dimension overwhelmingly. I've talked to people all around the world, literally all around the world, who've had the experience of what's called shapeshifting, which can be quite simply explained.
Yeah, what is shapeshifting?
Okay.
In brief.
Right.
Because I want to talk to you about the moon after this.
Okay. So these particular bloodlines, they have two energetic fields. We have an energetic field, the human field, right? Now, okay, oh dear. Again, you have to go into certain background about the nature of reality itself before shapeshifting becomes explainable.
You know, people are going to struggle with the words reality and aliens in the same sentence.
Yeah, well, they can struggle how they like. I'm only interested in what's going on. So let's put it this way. One of the things that's very, very clear to me is as this technological explosion is unfolding, getting more and more faster and faster, it's actually mirroring the very reality that we're experiencing and the way we experience it. So in this room probably is Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi is encoded in a radiation field with all the information of the internet. If I get a computer, but we can't see it, where's the frickin' Wi-Fi? It's outside visible light, so we can't see it. So then you get a computer. And what the computer does is decode the Wi-Fi. And it decodes the Wi-Fi and it puts it on the screen in a completely different form to how it exists in the Wi-Fi field. It's graphics, it's moving pictures, it's words, whatever. And the inside the computer is where the decoding is going on. So we're looking at the screen, but actually everything's going on inside the computer. So then, this is why I call the human body a biological computer. When you do the research into how the body works, and this again is mainstream science, the five senses, which is how we interact with this reality we think is real, are picking up waveform information. A wonderful example, perfect example, is the ears. I'm talking to you now, but there's not words passing between us. What's passing between us is a frequency field of information generated by my vocal cords. Your ears pick up those sound waves. They turn them into electrical signals. They communicate them electrically to the brain, and different parts of the brain specialize in decoding the different senses. So the visual part is back here somewhere. And then the brain puts together that information into a sense of reality that we think is external to us. And, it looks as if it's external the way we experience it. But actually it's all going on in here, just as it's going on inside the computer. So all the senses work in the same way. They take frequency information and they turn it into electrical information and communicate it to the brain. So what I'm looking at now is, in its base form, I'm looking at an information field, which is what your body is, my body is. And if you get into quantum physics, the physics below the material world in the deep energetic levels, they've shown this to be true. Nothing that we think is physical is actually physical. I'll give you an example. We are told that physicality is created by atoms, right? Atoms are empty. They have no solidity. There's a great phrase that describes it. If, an atom is a nucleus and there's then the electrons flying around the nucleus. That's what an atom is. It has no solidity. And as someone said, if you take the nucleus to be the size of a 10-cent piece, then the atom would be the size of a baseball stadium. And virtually everything inside an atom is, quote, empty space. You go into the nucleus and you go into the electrons and it's the same thing. It's empty space. How can empty space create a physical world? It can't, because it's all a fricking illusion decoded by the mind.
How do we explain pain then? If you was to punch me in the nose, that's a physical act and I'm going to feel the force of that and it's going to hurt.
Very, very good question, which can be explained because...
I'm not encouraging you do punch me in the face.
No. I'm not violent. Give me 10 minutes. There are now pain relief techniques which I came across when my son Gareth was in hospital with a broken leg, and I was chatting to the doctor, and he said, well, we're going to try to do this because these are new pain relief techniques. And what it was they take the point of the pain, in this case your chin, right, and they stop the signal going from the point of impact to the brain. Because only when that signal happens do you say, ouch, because the brain is decoding the signal into the pain. And
You sure that weren't morphine?
Pain is, like everything else, it's a frequency signal which the brain decodes. And it's if we go on in terms of the shape-shifting, therefore, I'm looking at you, and I am subconsciously, it's all in a non-conscious way, decoding your energetic information field into what I see as a human, because you are encoded with a human energy field. These hybrids have a human energy field, and they have a non-human energy field, often reptilian, but not always, nothing like. They seem to be a dominant force. And most of the time, they are projecting the human field. So you look at them, and you see a human. And what's happening when people see shape-shifting, and, you know, when people started telling me about this as I traveled around the world, I didn't say, oh, they're shape-shifting reptilians. No, you go, okay, that's interesting, bloody far out, but interesting. And you put it on the back burner and you think, well, I'll see what else comes. And eventually enough common themes have repeated around the world for you to cross the line and say, I'm going to go with this because this seems to be happening. So when the non-human energy field becomes the dominant one, and often it does in things like satanic rituals. So many people taking part in satanic rituals, often against their will, have told me about seeing this shape-shifting phenomenon there, as well as in everyday life, though it's obviously not it's not common, but it's more common than people realize. Suddenly, I'm looking at you, and now your human field has been overridden by your non-human field. Now, as I decode your field into human and the dominant level of your field becomes non-human, to me, as I look at you, you have shifted physically into a non-human form. But you haven't. It's all in the decoding processes of the brain. What's happened is there's been an energetic information field shift, and therefore I've decoded an apparently physical shift that actually is an illusion.
Is there a chance that I'm a reptile and I don't even know it?
Well, it's interesting, you know, one of the most profound parts of the brain.
Because I'd be very upset if I am a reptile.
Well,
especially if I didn't know it.
First of all, the answer for lots of people is yes. But a lot of people really don't realize this as they laugh at things that I've said over the years. One of the most profound parts of the human brain that impacts fundamentally on human behavior is known by science as the reptilian brain, or the R complex. And it's this bit down the back, from the center down the back, the brainstem. And that's where, if you notice in the Matrix movies, that thing went in the back. That was right in the middle of the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is about survival. So it's constantly scanning the environment for threats to survival, not just physical survival. The reptilian brain is activated by, will I pay the freaking rent at the end of the month? What about my relationship? Is she gonna throw me out? all these things. Oh, I'm going to keep my job. What do you think the boss is going to do at the end of the month? Do you think he's going to fire me? This is all reptilian brain. Road rage. You know when you bastard.
Oh, I'm definitely a reptile then.
That's the activation of the reptilian brain. It's a fundamental impact on human behavior.
Before I forget,
the longer I've gone on, the more I don't think that's an accident that we have that.
Well, here's the thing. So you mentioned the Matrix. So do you think that our human reality is a false simulation like the Matrix?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're living in the Matrix?
Yeah. Like I said right at the start, I've been through this sequence and at every stage, okay, I think I got this, but what don't I know? And this is the sequence it's taken me through. There is a global network of secret societies that are driving human dystopia. Behind that, answering to that, is a non-human force. Then this reality is a simulation. It's very much, you know, when the Matrix movies came out, especially the first one, it was like a breath of fresh air to me because I thought, here's a visual expression of how I'm seeing it. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that I felt that this was a simulated reality. And simulated for what? To control our perceptions, for reasons that I'm sure we'll come to.
So does that mean nothing really matters then? If you get your heart broken, it doesn't matter, it's not real. Do you know what I mean?
Well, when we get into why a bit later maybe, why the simulation was created, all those things will become very clear. So I said just after this turn of the millennium that I felt we were in a simulation and that the human level of the simulation was pretty much the speed of light. So the speed of light appears to be the fastest speed that is possible. It's not, but it appears to be from a science point of view. When actually it's basically the limit of this human level of the simulation. So what I did then is I looked around for anyone else that was saying it. And I found only one guy who was saying it in the public arena. It was a guy called Nick Bostrom, a professor then at Oxford University, who was saying that there's a very good chance this is a simulation. And in his view, it was possibly created by humans in the future, you know, all that stuff. I don't see it like that at all, but I do agree it's a simulation. And I said that I felt the speed of light was the limit at this level of it, or one of the limits. And then from about 2016, mainstream scientists started kicking in and saying, well, this does look like it's a simulation. And not only that, if it is, it suddenly makes so much make sense that doesn't make sense otherwise in physics and what have you. There was a guy called Rich Terrell. He worked at NASA in the computer area of NASA. And he came out in the papers in 2016-17 and said that he felt that this was a simulation, a holographic simulation, which is what I said years and years before, and that what we call physicality is actually holographic. You see where holographic technology has gone now. And that if it's a simulation, then it's clearly not natural, is it? So some form of intelligence had to create it. And this has gone on now. There's another guy called Silas Bean. He led he's a physicist. He led a team at the University of Bonn to investigate, is this a simulation? And he and his team came to the conclusion that it probably was. They even proposed that it was probably based on some kind of cube matrix, and that we wouldn't know about it as we experienced it. And then you've got a guy called Max Tegmark at MIT who wrote a book, Our Mathematical Universe, I think it was called. And he was pointing out, not that it was a simulation, but what he was pointing out was that everything can be broken down to mathematics and numbers. This whole reality can be broken down into mathematics and numbers. And, he was pointing out that, if you were in a computer game, and, once again, what we call virtual reality computer games are mirroring the reality we're experiencing, and in many ways using the same senses to give us the illusion of the game. He was pointing out that if you're in a computer game, you wouldn't know you were in a computer game. To you, it would be real. But just like a computer game can be broken down into numbers and coding, so can our reality. And he made this point. He said the physics of computer games, virtual reality computer games, and the physics of our reality is the same. And what's gone on since then, there's a guy at Portsmouth University, a physicist, who was in the papers 2023, 2024, saying that he has concluded we're in a simulation. He wrote a book of his papers. And interestingly, he said, and its foundation is information. Now, that's what I was saying at the turn of the millennium, that this simulation is just like Wi-Fi, it's an information field, which we're decoding. And thus, because, let me put it this way. If you go on the internet, like a video platform, and you put in words to the effect of compilation of people doing silly things while a headset's on, or in a computer game, you find these videos, and what happens is they put a headset on. Now, they might be in an empty room. Well, obviously there's a cameraman as well, but there's just a room, normal reality. They put the headset on. Within seconds, their sense of reality, their sense of perception is transformed. They're screaming, they're falling off their chair, they're running away, they're in an emotional state in reacting to what they're seeing. And imagine this is a biological computer. This is a headset, symbolically, and it's decoding this matrix field of information into the appearance and the experience of a virtual reality. You enter the body, you enter the womb, and as the body forms, your headset is forming. You come out of the womb, and everyone, your parents and everyone, your siblings, they're all wearing symbolic headsets because they're decoding the same matrix as you are. And so everyone's agreed that this reality is real when without the headset, it wouldn't be anything like it is. So you go through your life, and everyone is wearing headsets. You put the teacher, you go to school, and the teacher wearing a headset, telling you what's real and what's not. You turn the television on, hello, good evening and welcome, this is the news, bloke wearing a headset. And they're all decoding the same fake reality. And then we come to this point where you take the headset off, and the only way you can take the headset off, and that's what we call death. So what happens at death? The biological computer ceases to function, ceases to decode the matrix field. And if you, and I've done this, my God, I've watched and read so many of these so-called near-death experiences that people have had with enormous, phenomenal common themes. And they say that when the body dies, ceases to decode the matrix, and they find themselves in a completely different reality with a completely different law of physics and everything. And then their body is revived and they find themselves back in the body and back in this reality. And that's all death is. It's the body, the vehicle to experience this reality, which is then ceasing to function. So you're on the internet on your computer and the screen goes blank. What do we say? My computer's died. Exactly. It ceased to decode the Wi-Fi.
Does it reboot again, though? Is there life after death? Or is there a new matrix after death?
Well, you see, this is another interesting thing. You know, I said I got to the point where I could see that this was a simulation. And it's becoming more and more confirmed all the time. The next stage was this question, because what you do when you work on the basis of, well, this is what I think I know, but what else is there to know? You should keep asking freaking questions. So my question was, okay, I'm saying that our true state is one of a formless state of consciousness. We are a state of being aware. The question is how aware. So you can take on a physical body and you can experience your awareness, can experience this reality through this. Otherwise, I couldn't pick that up. My consciousness, your consciousness, everyone's consciousness is vibrating so fast. There's not it's not within anything like the frequency band of this so-called physical world. So I couldn't pick that up. So I take on an external body shell, which is resonating within the frequency band that I want to experience, and then I can pick that up, right? Okay, I've traveled the world a lot till I started getting banned from all these countries, and the vast majority of people in this world are not having a good time. In fact, they're having a frickin' awful time. They're trying to survive another day in South America, in Africa, in Asia, Central America, but also massively in the West as well. And this was my question. Okay, I can understand how maybe consciousness could be manipulated into this reality once. But once you've kind of left the body and been freed from it, why the frickin' hell would you come back? Why would you do that? I mean, you go, well, gee, I ain't going back there again. It's a shithole, that place. Wouldn't you? Most people. So then I started looking into the afterlife. I started looking at these near-death experiences. I also came across people, again with tremendous common themes, who said they could remember their incarnation process, some of their between life, other dimensional experience, and then coming into the body. And I say the common themes, and one of the common themes is how freaking dense this reality is. It's what they all say. When I was coming into this reality, as one said, the frequency, the density, it got lower, 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 and then lower, 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 and lower, 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 to the point where it's really hard to experience. And that kind of gives you a feel for how we need to look at ourselves as humans and say, actually, we're in such a challenging environment, such a challenging energetic environment. We need to be a bit kinder to ourselves and realize we are in a seriously challenging situation. So they talk about, and I talked to these people and read their accounts, and millions of bloody near-death accounts now. And I came to the conclusion a long time ago that reincarnation is real, the reincarnation of consciousness, not the reincarnation of the body. It just dies and disappears. Reincarnation of consciousness in and out of this reality in so-called different lives. And these people that can remember their between life, if you like, between human life experience, they talk about how detailed it is deciding what you're going to do next or what you're going to experience next in the human world. Because I started to realize that this matrix, this simulation, is not just the human level. There's another level of it, which is known in esoteric circles as the astral level. And the Buddhists have this concept of the wheel of samsara, where you keep leaving the human level of what I would say is the simulation, and you go into this astral level, and you keep coming back. And it's like, round and round forever. And as I looked at these accounts of near-death experiences, of going up the tunnel to the light at the end or following the light or whatever, and the common themes were kind of the massive, like if they were a Christian, they would maybe see Jesus. If they were a Muslim, they might see a Muslim figure, a Hindu figure, right? So, right. And if you're a Christian and suddenly someone who looks like Jesus, and by the way, there is nothing in the Bible that describes Jesus, and the figure we call Jesus, the image we call Jesus, was Renaissance artists who decided that's what he was, right?
Could you not astral project yourself back in time to see what he looked like?
Well, did he look like anything is the question. The astral projection is something that
that's interesting.
Is very relevant, and I'll come to that in a sec, because that comes to why is the Matrix created in the first place?
Because my cousin told me that he could astral project one day, and, I just thought, you fucking madman.
No, there's people that can skillfully do it.
Can you do it?
I will come to that. Well, I mean, I don't go into the astral and see it, but what I've done ever since my head blew off in 1990 is, and this whole new life opened up, is I go into massive coma sleeps. I mean, just coma sleeps, often in the middle of the bloody day. And it's been going on since about 1990. And when I wake up, and sometimes it can take me half an hour to come around, I kind of know things I didn't know before. So, take that as you will. But what I was looking at with these near-death experiences and these common themes is that they were seeing religious figures or that related to their belief, that they were seeing maybe loved ones or whatever. And if you're a Christian, like I say, and you see the figure you recognize as Jesus, I say they're projections, but it's all in the book, you're going to follow him. Of course you're going to follow him. You've been programmed to follow him here. If you see a figure you relate to Islam and you're a Muslim, you're going to follow him, aren't you, up the tunnel. And then the common theme is that they go into this life review, right? And often this life review is held and overseen by what they call elders. This is common theme, constant. And they're in the robes and they have the long white beard and they're wizened, wise old men. Well, hold on a minute. In the astral, there is no aging. It's a completely different level of reality. The aging is something that relates to this simulated level of the matrix we call human. So why wizened old men? Because what are we programmed to believe here in the human world before we leave? That wizened old men are a symbol of wisdom. So these wizened old men then tell these near-death experience people that they still have lessons to learn. It's their karma. Karma, a load of old bollocks. It's their karma. And therefore, you've got to go back, and this is what these people that can remember their between life experience talk about, that the next life is decided and worked out on the basis of what they still have to learn, right? And what I saw was that the human world and this astral world have enormous common themes. And one of them is giving your power away to authority. So in the human world, people are giving their power away to authority all the time. Yes, sir, no, sir. Go and fight this group. Yes, I'll go and fight them. Oh, and you fight them. Oh, yeah. Authorities told us we've got to go and fight. We've got to have a war and all that stuff. And then when you get into the astral realm, you are presented with authority figures. Might be a religious hero. It might be a wizened, wise old man. And they tell you that you've got to come back to learn lessons for your evolution. Load of old bollocks. Right. So you're on this wheel of samsara and you keep going round. So the next question, why? What's the frickin' point of creating this illusory reality and then creating this reincarnation stuff? And by the way, on the reincarnation thing, there have been psychologists. There's one I quote in the book called Ian Stevenson, no longer with us, but he did a lot of research into reincarnation in the sense that young kids, most people remember nothing about previous lives because just as an aside, it's not really an aside, it's important. When these people say they remember their incarnation process, they talk about coming in through a electromagnetic field that wipes their memory. Now, it doesn't completely wipe everyone's memory, but in the sense of these young kids, they usually stop remembering previous lives by the age of 7, 8, 10. So he was looking at these really young kids, and he set out to debunk it. I'm going to show that they don't know what they're talking about, and it's all in their mind. So these kids, lots of them in different parts of the world, were describing in great detail a previous life. They were describing places that they, in this life, had never been. They were describing buildings and how they were laid out, buildings that they'd never been in. And they were presenting real fine detail of a previous life. And some of them were talking about a previous life in which people that were part of that life were still alive. There's one incident. He's got this little kid who's claiming that he was married to some woman who's now obviously much older. And so they're taking the kid to the house for this interaction. And he said the funny thing was the child was talking to the now much older previous wife, as he claimed, as if she was still his wife. He's just a little kid. And they said in the end, the family, look, if what you say is true, where's your bloody will? We've never been able to find your will. And this kid walked over to a place on the kitchen floor, pointed to it. They took the floorboard up, and there was the fucking will. And so this guy wrote thousands of papers on, and a whole book on trying to debunk these people, but he couldn't. And so I concluded a long time ago that reincarnation was real. The question is, as I say, why? What's it all about? What's the reason? Well, and this actually will also explain why satanic ritual and why human sacrifice ritual, why it's been going on from the ancient world and is still going on in secret now. There was a guy called Robert Monroe, and coming back to what you mentioned earlier, he was a very skilled astral traveler. For people who haven't come across this, astral traveling is the ability to project your consciousness, as your mate said, project your consciousness into this astral dimension, not as a near-death experience, but while you're very bodily still alive, but you project it into the astral dimension. And you can experience the astral and what have you. Now, he became very skilled. He wrote a series of books. He was a media executive, actually, he started out. He wrote many books and popularized this astral traveling phenomenon. And he became so skilled at it that the US military got involved. The psychological part of the US military. And they did a study. It was called Gateway. And what they did was, and the CIA declassified the report some years ago now. They got together other people who had this ability to astral travel, to project their consciousness into this other dimension that's very close to this one. And the study was, well, what did they experience? And are there any common themes of what they claim to experience? Well, first of all, these people, these astral projectors in the Gateway study, they came across so many reptilian entities in the astral dimension that the study gave them the name the alligators. Oh, I've seen some more alligators, right? And what Robert Monroe said, and this is confirmed by others too, is that he learned in his astral travels over many, many, many years that these entities are feeding off human energy. But it's a particular type of human energy, low vibrational human energy, which relates to fear, hatred, anxiety, depression, regret, remorse, all of it, all these low vibrational energies that bring us down, that are the result of events in the world and our lives that give us this emotional kind of turmoil. And they're feeding off it. And when you again do the research into in mainstream science, every time we feel emotion and every time we think, we're generating a frequency. And that frequency relates to the nature of the emotion and the nature of the thought. So joy, happiness, peace, appreciation, everyone getting on, is a high vibrational energy. No good to these entities. They want the low vibrational energy because they're in a low vibrational state or they wouldn't do what they're doing. So in simple terms, these creators of this illusory reality have no interest in a world of love, a world of joy, a world of happiness, a world of peace, none of it. They want to constantly, through their global cult network, to constantly create events, wars, suffering, anything that would generate low vibrational, emotional, and mental energy, because they're feeding off it. And they have created this matrix specifically to hijack human perception in this low vibrational state. The more wars there are, the better from their point of view. The more upheavals there are, the more suffering there are, the more distress there is, the more you're trying to survive another week. Oh, my God. All this stuff is giving off the energy that they want. And Robert Monroe gave this energy a name. He called it Loosh. And there's a chapter in the roadmap called Loosh Farm, which explains all this. So when I started putting together this global cult network in the early 1990s, I started to notice that these frickers were taking part in satanic ritual.
If you want to read more and watch more of my content, then go to the description under the video where you can buy my books. The latest one is The Roadmap, where you can get tickets for public events, and how you can subscribe to a fantastic video channel called Iconic, iconic.com.